The vast emptiness of the American Southwest had always drawn her in. The desert stretched out for miles, dotted with scraggly bushes and lonely cacti. The sky was a brilliant blue, with the sun hanging high, blazing down with relentless heat. She had been driving for hours, feeling the thrill of adventure, with the car's air conditioner working overtime to keep the heat at bay. But adventure quickly turned to anxiety when the car started making a strange, sputtering noise. She glanced at the dashboard. The fuel gauge was fine. The engine temperature was normal, but something was definitely wrong. Suddenly, the car lurched forward and then died, coasting to a stop on the side of the lonely highway. She tried the ignition again, but the engine only clicked in response. Frustration bubbled up. Great. Just great. Stuck in the middle of nowhere. There was no cell service out here. The bars on her phone were stubbornly empty. She got out of the car and looked around. The heat was intense, shimmering waves rising from the asphalt. In the distance, she could see the faint outline of buildings. It was a long walk, but it was the only option. She grabbed a backpack, filled it with a water bottle, a flashlight, and some snacks, and started walking toward what looked like an abandoned city. The walk was grueling. Her shoes kicked up dust with every step, and the sun beat down mercilessly. After what felt like hours, she finally reached the outskirts of the city. It was eerily quiet. The only sound the crunch of gravel under her feet. The buildings were old and crumbling, windows shattered, doors hanging off their hinges. It was clear this place had been abandoned for a long time. She wandered down the main street, eyes wide with curiosity and a bit of fear. It was like stepping into a ghost town. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of wood as a breeze blew through the empty streets. Her footsteps echoed loudly, the only sign of life in this forgotten place. One building caught her eye. It was an old theater, its marquee letters long gone, leaving only the faint outline of what might have once been a movie title. The doors were slightly ajar, and she felt a strange pull to go inside. Inside, the air was cool and musty. The theater was surprisingly intact, with rows of dusty seats facing a tattered screen. She walked down the aisle, marveling at how time seemed to have stood still in here. It was as if the last show had ended abruptly, and everyone had just left. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed through the theater. It sounded like laughter, distant and distorted. She froze, listening intently. The laughter came again, closer this time. It sent a shiver down her spine. That's not possible. This place is supposed to be empty. She turned towards the exit, ready to leave. But curiosity got the better of her. Slowly, she moved towards the sound, heart pounding. The laughter grew louder, more menacing. Her flashlight beam swept across the theater, catching a glimpse of something in the corner. A figure stepped out of the shadows. It was a clown, but not the kind you'd see at a circus or birthday party. This clown was twisted, with a face painted in grotesque colors and a wide, sinister grin. Her breath caught in her throat. The clown tilted its head, eyes gleaming with a malevolent spark. She turned and ran. The sound of laughter chasing her out of the theater and into the empty streets of Dry Creek. As she ran, panic setting in. The town seemed to come alive with shadows and whispers. Every corner felt like a trap, every alley a dead end. Her mind raced, desperately searching for a way out. But the clown's laughter echoed in the distance, a chilling reminder that there was no escape from this nightmare. She stumbled upon a small library, its door slightly ajar. Without thinking, she slipped inside, slamming the door shut behind her. The library was dark and silent, a stark contrast to the terror outside. She sank to the floor, heart pounding, trying to catch her breath. For a moment, it seemed like she was safe, but the sound of footsteps approaching shattered that illusion. Her eyes darted around, searching for a place to hide. The library's shelves were packed with dusty books, providing little cover. She spotted a small closet in the corner and quickly slipped inside, closing the door just as the library door creaked open. Through the slats, she saw the clown enter the room, moving with an eerie grace. It seemed to know she was close. The clown's grin widened as it moved from shelf to shelf, humming a twisted tune. She held her breath, praying the clown wouldn't find her. The clown paused right in front of the closet, its breath audible through the thin door. Her heart raced, every muscle tense with fear. After what felt like an eternity, the clown moved on, leaving the library. She waited, listening to the receding footsteps and the eventual silence that followed. Tears of relief streamed down her face. But deep down, she knew this was just the beginning. The clown was out there, and it wouldn't stop until it had caught its prey. She stayed hidden in the small closet, breath shallow and heart racing. The minutes ticked by painfully slow, but eventually she gathered enough courage to peek out. The library was silent once more, the eerie presence of the clown gone for now. She knew hiding wouldn't solve anything. The only way to escape was to find a way out of this nightmare. With cautious steps, she left the library, constantly glancing over her shoulder. The streets of Dry Creek were as empty as ever, but now they felt even more menacing. The sun had set, casting long, sinister shadows. She moved quickly, looking for any signs of help. There had to be a phone somewhere, or at least a place to hide until morning. She spotted a diner across the street, its neon sign flickering weakly. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, it was just as abandoned as the rest of the town. Dust-covered booths, overturned stools, and broken dishes littered the floor. She made her way to the counter, hoping to find a phone. She picked up the receiver, but there was no dial tone, only silence. Suddenly, the laughter grew louder, closer. She looked up, heart pounding. There, standing in the doorway, was the clown. Its face twisted in a grotesque grin, eyes gleaming with sadistic delight. The blood-stained knife glinted in the dim light. She dropped the phone and backed away slowly. The clown took a step forward, and she turned to run. The back door of the diner led into a narrow alley. She sprinted down the alley, the sound of footsteps and laughter echoing behind. Every turn seemed to lead to another dead end, another trap. She stumbled into a small courtyard, panting and desperate. The buildings loomed high, casting deep shadows. The clown's laughter echoed through the narrow streets, a haunting reminder of the relentless pursuit. She knew she had to keep moving, but every direction seemed like a dead end. A flicker of light caught her eye. Across the courtyard, a building's window glowed faintly. With no other options, she dashed towards it. The door was unlocked, and she slipped inside, locking it behind her. Inside, the building was dark and filled with strange, ominous shapes. She found a flashlight in her backpack and switched it on. The beam of light revealed old, dusty furniture and bizarre graffiti on the walls. The same twisted clown faces and eerie messages were everywhere. Welcome to the show. Run if you can. Catch me if you dare. She moved cautiously, flashlight sweeping across the room. In the center, a large piece of paper was pinned to the wall. It was a map of the town, marked with various symbols and notes. She realized it was a guide to the clown's twisted game, detailing traps and safe zones. Understanding the layout was crucial. She studied the map, memorizing the paths and hazards. As she focused, the sound of distant footsteps broke the silence. The clown was getting closer. She had to move fast. She hurried through the building, flashlight illuminating the way. The old library had seemed like a good hiding spot before, but now she needed more information. She needed to understand who this clown was and why Dry Creek had become his playground. She found a dusty office at the back of the building. Papers and books were scattered everywhere. In the corner, an old journal caught her eye. It was tattered and yellowed with age, the cover marked with the name Rictus. She flipped it open and began reading. The journal belonged to a man named Joseph Carver, who had lived in Dry Creek before it was abandoned. The entries described how the town had once been a bustling place until a maniac in a clown costume started terrorizing the residents. He called himself Rictus, and delighted in causing fear and pain. The townspeople tried to fight back, but Rictus was too cunning, too relentless. Eventually, the town was abandoned, left to decay in the desert heat. As she read, a chill ran down her spine. Rictus wasn't a ghost or a spirit. He was a real person, a sadistic killer who had turned Dry Creek into his own personal hunting ground. The last entry in the journal described how the remaining townspeople had tried to set a trap for Rictus, but it ended in bloodshed and despair. The final words were a desperate plea for anyone who found the journal. Beware the clown. He lives to torment. She closed the journal, determination hardening her resolve. She needed to find a way out of Dry Creek to survive this nightmare. But first, she had to outsmart Rictus. She took a deep breath, clutching the journal, and prepared to face the next stage of the clown's twisted game. Her heart pounded as she left the office, the journal clutched tightly in her hands. The flashlight beam trembled as she navigated the dark hallways, each step echoing ominously. The oppressive silence of Dry Creek was pierced only by the occasional distant laughter of Rictus, a reminder of the sadistic killer's relentless pursuit. With a deep breath, she stepped back into the streets, the cold desert night biting at her skin. The buildings loomed like silent sentinels, their broken windows like eyes watching every move. As she moved cautiously down an alley, a soft whisper floated through the air. "Come out and play, Jamie." The voice was chilling, sending shivers down her spine. She quickened her pace, but the whispers followed, growing louder, more insistent. "Jamie, I'm so close. Can you feel it?" The voice was everywhere, echoing off the walls, slipping into her ears like poison. She rounded a corner and froze. There, standing under a flickering street lamp, was Rictus. His painted face twisted into a grotesque grin, eyes gleaming with sadistic delight. The blood-stained knife glinted in the dim light. She turned and ran, the sound of the clown's laughter growing louder, more manic. The streets blurred as she sprinted, the terror giving her speed. Every corner felt like a trap, every shadow a lurking danger. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, her body pushed to the limit. She stumbled into the center of town, where the remnants of an old carnival stood as a grim reminder of the past. Broken rides and faded tents created a nightmarish landscape, perfect for the final showdown. She knew this was it, the place to make her stand. She'd found a trap in the journal, one the townspeople had set years ago but failed to spring. With frantic hands, she prepared the trap, hoping it would be enough to stop Rictus. The clown's voice echoed through the carnival, closer now, more menacing. The whispers seemed to come from everywhere, seeping into her mind. The carnival felt alive with the sound of the clown's twisted game. She finished setting the trap and took a position behind an old, rusted ticket booth, waiting. Minutes felt like hours, each heartbeat a deafening drum. Then, a shadow moved. Her breath caught in her throat as Rictus stepped into view, his eyes gleaming with malevolent delight. He moved with an eerie grace, his knife glinting in the dim light. "Here we are, Jamie," Rictus whispered, his voice a venomous hiss. "The grand finale." He took a step closer, and her fingers tightened around a makeshift weapon, an iron rod found among the carnival debris. Rictus advanced, his laughter a chilling serenade. She waited, the trap set, the moment perfect. Just as Rictus stepped over the hidden wire, she pulled the trigger. A hidden mechanism sprang to life, sending a cascade of heavy debris crashing down. The impact was brutal, the sound deafening. Rictus was knocked to the ground, blood pooling around him. She stepped forward, thinking it was over. But as she approached, Rictus's hand shot out, grabbing her ankle. His eyes were filled with a murderous fury, his grin even more twisted with blood. Rictus pulled her down, the iron rod slipping from her grasp. The clown's strength was terrifying, his grip like a vice. She struggled, kicking and screaming, but Rictus was relentless. He loomed over her. Her screams echoed through the carnival, a desperate, primal sound. The knife came down, slicing through flesh with sickening ease. Pain exploded in her chest, the world spinning in a blur of agony and blood. Rictus laughed, a dark, victorious sound. "Did you really think you could win?" he hissed, his face inches from hers. The clown's breath was hot and foul, his eyes burning with sadistic glee. "This is my show, Jamie. And it always ends the same way.